What's up, guys? What we're going to talk about today is I think I'm going to list this as part two to the 5-cycle engine. Sorry, today I don't feel too good. Kind of think I got a little cough and cold going on. So if any coughing and colding goes on during the video, I apologize in advance. Alright. So I have so much information on this subject. Just over the years that I've been doing this, I've acquired so much information. Alright, so how should we get into this? Alright, so let me just kind of sum this up in case nobody saw the last video. So this is the engine. What we were talking about is a 5-cylinder or 5 cycles. The 5th cycle is going to be, it actually is going to start as the 1st cycle, which is going to be a supercharged event on the intake seat and intake valve, brought upon by the exhaust gases going through the exhaust pipe. As those exhaust gases are rushing through the exhaust pipe, they're actually a physical, measurable force, which behind it generates a low pressure area. And as these start stacking up, as the engine accelerates faster and faster, these things going down the length of the exhaust tube are, a fireball with a low pressure, fireball with a low pressure. So these are kind of like segmented going down. And as that is optimized, these are creating basically a chain reaction of this high pressure, low pressure. So high pressure exiting a low pressure behind it with another high pressure exiting behind it, which is getting drawn forward faster by the low pressure in front of it, which is then creating an even lower pressure behind that, which is drawing the fireball behind that or the other exhaust event. And this it backs its way up all the way into the cylinder itself. And at that time, when that basically stacking event hits the cylinder, that is when the 5th stage of the 4-cycle engine begins. So once that's in process and happening, so that's stage 1. You have this event occurring, then your intake valve opens. When your intake valve opens at this point, the cylinder pressure is already low to the point of maybe 2 bar negative, which creates a suction through the intake valve. Now, not all 4-cycle engines have this. And the reason not all 4-cycle engines have this 5th cycle is because they're not tuned to have it. This is something you need to create. This is not something that just is. This is in an optimized situation. And this is what companies like Yamaha, Honda, Ducati, and all these manufacturers work towards, is optimizing the signals on the intake and the exhaust side. Now, the way this works is it's an exhaust-driven event driving through the intake, which then supercharges the air. Now I mentioned it could be at 2 bar. A bar is like 14 point something psi, so a negative 2 bar drop could be anywhere from 28 to 30 psi negative in the cylinder at the time this event happens. Now, when you hear that number like 30 psi, you automatically think of like a supercharger or boost. Now, a supercharger and boost are putting this 30 psi out at a steady flow rate. It's just a constant. This pressure drop that's created during this 5th cycle event is more of a spontaneous, maybe just a few degrees of rotation, maybe 20 degrees of total engine rotation, which is huge. Now, I'm not underplaying this in any way. It's just not equivalent to a turbo or supercharger when it comes to boost, but it is a supercharging event. That being said, there is so much information when it comes to this that I have. First and foremost, the best performance part by far, bar none, that you can bolt on an engine is a cylinder head. Okay, I have a list somewhere that, you know, I probably could do a video on itself. But I had wrote down, okay, how about this? Best bolt-on parts. So I'll just go through the performance parts. I'll do a separate video on this in length. In order, bolt-on parts. Number one, cylinder head. The reason I have so much information on the cylinder head is the cylinder head is where you make the power. The lower end is where you build reliability, durability, the ability to handle the power. So the number one bolt-on part is the cylinder head. Anything involving the cylinder head. You know, this is not where you would start with your engine build. You would definitely start in the bottom end. You always want to make sure your engine can handle the power. You would always want to build reliability or durability. It's not going to be reliable. The more money you put into an engine, you're not building longevity. The more money you put into an engine, the shorter it's going to last, but the more fun you're going to have. So you could put, you know, like a Top Fuel dragster. I mention them a lot. You know, it's probably $100,000 setup if you bought it all new, maybe more. Definitely more, now that I think about it. I mean, just the blocks you can buy used. You know, you can buy a used Top Fuel dragster block for 10 grand. Pretty cool. But brand new, you know, you're probably talking about a $200,000 engine. That $200,000 engine is designed to make 1 to maybe 3. The entire engine might last 10 to 12 runs, but every part is checked after each run. And most parts are replaced after 1 run, and things like rods and stuff like that are replaced after 3. After 10, they take the block and resize everything. But it just goes to show you, the more money you spend on these engines, they don't last longer. They just make more power. More power is more fun. So definitely start by building the base of the engine up. If you go and just if you took one of my heads and bolted it onto a stock motor, you rev it up to top RPM, bang. It's not even going to finish the RPM band and it's going to explode. So that being said, so back to the bolt-on parts. Best thing is anything to do with the cylinder head. Number 1 would be cylinder head. Number 2 would be carb. Number 3 would be exhaust. Number 4 would be cam. And number 5 would be ratio rockers. Okay. So this event, I started talking about it yesterday. There's just so much information on it. What that event does is you're trying to improve flow through the intake valve. Flow, I've said this almost in every video I've put out recently, flow has a direct correlation to horsepower. I'm sorry, I don't feel good today. So the more you can flow, the more power you can make. The absolutely number one robber of horsepower in an engine is your intake valve. That is the most important part of the engine. That sounds so stupid when I say that, but it really is the most important part of the engine. Getting air in and around that frickin' valve is it's the goal. That's the only thing you can think about when you're trying to make power. How am I going to get this air into this damn cylinder? What the hell is this big thing in my way? What is this frickin' valve? So getting air around that valve is everything. So what this supercharging 5th stage does is you have different amounts of flow around the valve at different lifts. Now, this branches me off. My mind goes in so many different ways right now. you know, my mind starts thinking about flow benches, you know, flow pressures. You know, if you test the same head at 25 or 28 or 40, the bigger the pressure drop, the more it's going to say it flows. You know, you could test a head at 25 and have it flow 200 CFM, test it at 40 pressure drop, and it would flow 350 CFM. So with that being said, that pressure drop in the cylinder that you're going to create is going to create that insane amount of flow that you're looking for. Now this happens in the low lift area, and obviously the low lift area is the area of the valve travel that we need to improve the flow over. If you look at the entire valve cycle, its duration, you know, its entire lift, and you put it basically into a chart where it was like a bump, and you put a line across it, and you measured the amount of low lift it has and the amount of high lift it has, the valve spends more time in the low lift area than it does in the high lift area. So focusing on improving the air intake around the low lift flow is how you make power. I know when we were flow testing my head, I flow tested that goddamn head. I spent $500 in flow testing, and this was like a pity thing. The guy tells me when I call him $85 to flow test the head. Now this isn't the last time I had it done. This was when I was creating the cylinder head from scratch the first time. And this was at a different place in Stoughton. The one I went to was in Hopkinton, import machine. But you know, he tells me $85 to flow the head, and I'm like, okay. So I go down there, I flow the head, and I'm like, what the hell did I just pay for? I just got some numbers. I didn't improve anything. So he flowed my head, and I'm like, duh, I should have probably thought about what flow test in my head was gonna be. A process. It's a process. It's expensive. So doing it yourself, I'm retired. I spend stupid amounts of money on this stuff. I love it. I just love doing it, so I don't really care. I mean, look at my kitchen. Like, it's retarded. I hope I'm putting this back in the right spot. But, so improving that low lift flow is everything. So how can we improve that low lift flow? This event helps significantly. This event has to be created, like I said. Now you create this event by timing your camshaft. I spoke about this in the last video, but that's basically what this comes down to. This comes down to camshaft design. Talking to your camshaft manufacturer and asking them to suggest one. You call Dyno Cams and say, hey, can you suggest me a cam? They're gonna say, I don't know, the 330, the 356 cam seems alright. Like, they don't know. You need to talk to somebody that knows how to grind a cam, that knows what grinding in cam is all about, and knows how to like, if they're not asking you the right questions, like, you know, how much flow does your cylinder head have? You know, what's your compression ratio? You know, what's your exhaust size? How big is your engine, cc wise, cubic inch wise? If they're not asking you that stuff, there's no way they can properly give you a correct cam. I mean, those things are, you need to know them. So that being said, I probably will do another video on basically cams I've used, what I think about them, the type of power they made, and you know, so this all comes back to, and like, so there's so much interweaving of this subject, and that's why I have all these books in front of me, and I kind of seem scatterbrained right now. I'm sick, and it's just one thing, they all overlap. And I'm not good at organizing things. I don't know if it's my OCD. No, my OCD would probably make it organized. It's more my, the other one, the hyperactive, that one. But, so getting this event happening is necessary. That happens by the cam. Now, like I said, you know, you need to know, so here's another thing. This is how it overlaps. Your cam, choosing your cam, okay, choosing your cam is based on a few things. How much your cylinder head flows. okay? Now, you would not use the same cam lobe separation angle. So, I mean, duration, you want a lot of duration, as much duration as you can have. In order to generate this event, you need over 280 degrees of off the seat duration. Now, a lot of these cams are measured at 50 thousandths, and you might see it like, I don't know, 260 at 50 thousandths. You're going to be at 280 plus off the seat. So don't worry about that. They are available for you to just buy out there. But in order to get this event even to be thought about by the engine, you need to be over 280 degrees of duration off the seat. Write that down. Other things, so, you know, you just look at this hole underneath the intake valve and you say, all right, I need to get air through this thing. Number one thing you think of is just, okay, let's make the hole bigger. Yes, that does increase the flow. But, you know, depending upon your situation, is that optimum? Is that the optimum scenario? It all depends on what size valve you have, what size carbs you have. Now, if you're willing to change everything, basically like I am, just in this pursuit, if you're willing to change everything, the bigger you can go, more likely the better you are, as long as it's optimized. Now, if you're staying in the 36, 31, this might speak to more people out there. If you have a Predator 212 even, no matter what engine you have, if you're staying within the stock valves, best thing you could do is cut those seat angles. Now, okay, seat angles. The seat angles are huge to flow. That is all your low lift flow, is your seat angles. All your low lift flow comes from your seat angles. When you talk about, you know, CFM and this and that and the other thing, if you picture the port, of the engine, now you might have up here 300 CFM coming down the biggest part right after the carburetor. Okay, so up here in the port, you might have 300 CFM. You probably won't in a normal head, but let's just use these numbers, 300 CFM. As it's coming down the neck and into the bowl of the valve, it might drop down to 200. And then as it's coming around that valve, it might drop down to 100 CFM. Now, when you talk about velocity, it's almost the opposite. You might have 300 feet per second around the valve, 150 or 100 feet per second in the bowl, and maybe 10 feet per second in the big side. So, you know, what you're trying to do is maximize the flow in the low lift of the valve. So this applies to stock valves, large valves, anything. The seat has to be optimized. Now, people play with, you know, 45 degree angle valve seats. They play with 30 degree angle valve seats. The 45 degree angle valve seat is the best valve seat, and this is why. So if you lift the valve 50 thousandths of an inch, now this is just, I'm looking at this page here, and this is what I happen to have open. So let me show you this. So if you lift the valve 50 thousandths of an inch on a 45, it's only actually opening 35 thousandths of an inch. Okay? Which is crazy. You would think you lifted 50 thousandths, it opens for 50 thousandths, but it doesn't. Because the trailing edge of that 45, they're actually kind of going like this parallel. So it might lift up here, but then you still have this restriction back here. So I drew this bad, but they would be basically two lines. So it has to lift past this. So whatever your width of your 45 degree angle is the most important area. Now, for general rule of thumb, best flow from all these damn different, I mean, I spoke to 2 different people about this, well, 2 different shops, multiple different people at the first shops, and Dana Johnson at Import Machine. Now, the guys at the first shop, especially this guy John, he was extremely knowledgeable about seat angles and stuff like that. General rule of thumb, 60 thousandths of an inch, no wider. You'll see some seats that have, so say if this is the valve seat, I don't know if this is on camera, and this is, say, you know, coming down into the bowl, you know, whatever, I don't know, and this is your valve. This will be like this huge, thick 45 just all stupid in there. You know, you'll see even some cars like that. You know, and it's just like, all this 45, it's just killing flow. You know, and you'll get a new valve, and the face might be 100 thousandths of 45. You have got to get rid of that. So, and the only reason I'm talking about all this stuff is the valve is the number one thing in your engine. That this applies to any goddamn engine. I'm like a 390 guru. So I've built so many of these things, you know, it's just retarded at this point. And the information I have in these books. So optimizing that low lift flow. Cut that thing down to 60 thousandths of an inch across the board. Unless you guys want to go out and spend a minimum of $500 back and forth, driving to a place, coming home, making changes on your cylinder head that you don't know if they're gonna work, going back and flow testing it, coming home, making changes, going back and flow testing it. I mean, I did this so many times. The guys were giving me like 2 for 1s, you know, for a while until I finally, and they were just like, you know, it's pretty much as good as that port's gonna get. And it did get better after that, but only about 12 CFM flow numbers. I think I broke 160, and then we got it to 172 or something like that. So, cutting the 45 to the right size. Also, air can only change 15 degrees without knowing it's changed. So if you just have a bowl cut coming up to a 45 and then have a little zinger of a 30 on there like a stock valve seat does, it knows. It's going to hit that edge right there coming into that 45 and be like, what's going on? And just start going bananas. So you need to cut. So these are your 5 angles. I've spoke about this before in different videos. It's your 15 top cut, 30, they go in 15 degree increments, 45, 60, 75. From the bottom of the 45 to the bowl, you can transition all of those smooth after they've been cut. You don't want to touch the top end of the 45, and I always cut a 46 degree. Those are the New Wave valve seat cutters that I ordered. I don't cut a 45 on the seat, I cut a 46. Personal preference, a 45 and a 46 is no difference in flow. You wouldn't notice it. What I like about the 46 is that interference fit. And it puts the interference on the outside edge of the 45, so it really, by the time that valve gets in there and gets pounded, it really seals up that valve quicker and faster, and there's less of the actual seat touching. So the less, you know, you might think 1 degree, what's that gonna do? Well, remember when I talked about the width of those seats and how they have to pass each other? Well, I cut mine at a 46 because I feel that it gets past the other one a little bit quicker, and it puts a little bit more pressure in a smaller area, which really helps seal it up. But let me just see what else I have on this page here in case there's something I'm just so excited. The exhaust cycle that drives this whole thing. Now, when I heard about this whole timing event, I basically just wanted to get the best cam I could, you know, moving forward. So I called Dyno Cams and got 335 grind. That was gonna work for my lift that I needed. Oh, I also made you guys an awesome chart in this book that I made for myself that I'm going to share with you guys. You're gonna so the exhaust gases. So remember I was talking about the intake air can't change more than 15 degrees. Well, exhaust gases, because they're moving faster, they can't change more than 12. And you'll notice that people like Yamaha or trumpet makers, it's a very long gradual taper. So, and I think that's why that guy at MIT made such a long exhaust. Something to look into. I think there's two things that, well, there's one thing I ordered today. It was a 3-inch. I measured this. This is just bigger than 3 inches. It's a 3-inch silicone 90 made for a turbo that I'm going to mount on here to get the air coming in here. I'm gonna mount another Velocity stack on that with a filter. So that's gonna get filtered air down in here. You always want to use a filter. If you drive around in your car for a few weeks, take your air filter out and bang it out. All that dirt that's in there, imagine you just dumping that down into your piston. That's like valve grinding material. It's gonna go right down there, destroy your rings, destroy your seats, pit them up. You have to use, I know I don't have it on here now, but you got to use a filter. K&N, great high airflow filter. And if your carburetor shakes like this, a little bit of movement when the engine's running, that's great for a filter, because that actually causes the filter to scrub the air as it's going by. It'll scrub the air, so it'll catch a lot more particles that way, if that helps you or not. So if you have a lot more low lift flow, it extends the RPM range of your power. When you're bringing it on the dyno and you're doing dyno runs, if you have a lot of low lift flow, so that's why like a ratio rocker helps flatten out your curves. It improves low lift flow. So if you put, say, a 3-to-1 ratio rocker on the same cam, if you take away the lift flow differences, you're going to notice that the torque curve and the horsepower curves on there are a lot longer and flatter. Why? Because it's improving low lift flow. You're going to have a lot. So without having a ratio rocker, or without having a very wide, like a lot of duration, a fast ramp design on the cam, those are all things that give you a wider RPM range. You'll notice if something's set up wrong, you'll know it. If your shit's set up wrong, you'll know it. You'll get on the gas and it'll go and pick up towards the end, almost like a 2-stroke. It'll have this very short power band. You really want your shit to be pulling all the way. Creating this 5th event is, you will notice that when you get this thing done, I'm in the process of getting this thing figured out too. Don't think I got this all figured out. I'm always still learning stuff. We are going to get this thing optimized together. Stay tuned. By the end of these videos, we're going to know the goddamn best design. Trust me. I'm already optimized really well. We're going to take that to optimizing this 5th stage. All my other 1 through 4s are pretty much all optimized. Now this cam timing event is the thing that really has me peaking right now with excitement. I want to optimize on that. I want to take full advantage of that. I need to do further testing, but I will bring you guys all the way with me. Let's see what else I got written down in there. This doesn't really have to do with this 5th cycle. But never mind, it's just about the way you radius your heads. I don't know if you guys are ready. Let me show you. No. So you see here, so when the valve's open, you want to make sure that after that 15-degree top cut, you don't want it to be a hard corner in your combustion chamber. That lowers the flow. This was increasing my flow. And it increased it bigger. It increased it big time. Make sure on your exhaust valve you chamfer the edge at 25-degree angle. On your intake valve, make sure you do all your, around that intake valve is everything. So you got all your seat angles cut, that's all flowed right. If you can't flow test ahead, just do your best. Flow testing ahead will literally add 30% more power. 30%. And it could add 70% if you've done something wrong. If you've inverted flow somehow by porting your head, making your bowl on the, on the non-biased side wrong, inverted, you could literally have taken 70% of your power away. Buying a good head, number one purchase. I mean, you could spend $5,000 on an engine, or you could take a good head, spend $1,000, $1,200, do a head, make a nice head, and put that head on an engine on a stock bottom end that just has a rod and maybe a piston and a flywheel. Most of you guys already have that stuff, a rod and a flywheel. That bottom end at that point is pretty strong, pretty damn strong. And if you got a cam, you bolt on a head that's proper, and that's your power. That's your bolt on. It's the number one bolt on. Get a good freaking head. Trust me. In the pursuit of power. Dedicated to research, like it says on my channel. Let me see what else I have for information on this. I don't know what really I'm trying to find out anything that kind of coincides with this 5th cycle event. I know it's everything is just about getting the air around that valve. That is the biggest thing, and being able to supercharge that during that low lift flow. So a valve can only flow so much. So it has what's called a curtain area, or its skirt, whatever people call it, curtain. So 25% of the valve's diameter. Oh, I was going to show you guys something I had written down. I made a chart way back when. Here it is. Okay, this is something I'm going to show you. All right. Pause it. Snap a picture. Did you snap the picture? Also like the video. Alright, hold on. So, what that basically is, it's just a quick conversion chart. Now, why I made that was, if you'll notice, there was 3, you can go back and view this, and you'll see that there was 3 charts. And this is valve size to cam size. So choosing your cam, you can get a good basis on it based on your valves. Your port, your valve is the biggest restriction in the port. People go in there and start porting, and the first thing they start doing is porting on the port. There's no reason to start porting on that port unless you've put in a bigger intake valve. I mean, I go to the point where I'm freaking completely removing that intake port itself and installing a bigger port, because I'm putting in the biggest valve that I could possibly fit. Speaking about that, a 2-valve engine is never going to flow as good as a 4-valve engine. The 4 valves, even if the 2 other valves are smaller, they're just going to have more curtain area. So the best way to optimize a 2-valve head is to put in the absolute biggest valves possible. It applies to any 2-valve engine. As big a valve as you can, put it in. That's how you optimize any 2-valve engine. So that being said, so let me just start at the top of this page. So when does the port become a restriction? That's a good question. When would your port become a restriction? Your port becomes a restriction in flow when you get outside of that curtain area and lift. Let's say you have a 36 millimeter intake valve, okay? So your curtain area on a 36 millimeter intake valve is 352 thousandths. So 352 thousandths is 1/4 of 36 millimeter. So if you have a cam that lifts your engine over 352 thousandths, now the valve's going to be able to flow more air than the port, if the port has already been optimized. I'll tell you, in these Gx390 heads, those ports are not optimized. You need to get in there and do some work. Ooh, that being said, I have another, this is an even older notebook. This is about calculating port velocities. I mean, this is hard to find information out there. This is like black magic. Okay. Calculating port velocity. Here's the equation. Get a pen and paper. To calculate your port velocity, you're going to need your piston speed. Piston speed divided by 60 within parentheses. So you find out your piston speed, and then you divide that by 60. That's in parentheses. Then you times that by your bore times pi divided by your cross-sectional area, and that's in parentheses. So you have piston speed divided by 60 in parentheses times, and then another set of parentheses that within that has your bore times pi divided by your cross-sectional area. Okay? That's the equation. I'll hold it up here. So it's piston speed divided by 60 times bore times pi divided by cross-sectional area. Okay? This has all been worked out. That's not, none of this, don't focus on any of this information. This is not going to calculate through your calculations. You has to be through your own measurements. Okay. So you're going to say, well, how the hell do I calculate piston speed? To calculate piston speed, you need to know how it's feet per minute. So the piston speed is your stroke times RPM divided by 6. So you find out your stroke, you times that by however many RPMs you plan on turning this engine, and you divide that by 6. That equals your feet per minute. Now, when you're doing this calculation, you need to know what your goals are. Are you trying to build a torque motor and then saying you're gonna turn it 8,000 RPM? Like, you gotta be realistic. Like, I'm trying to turn mine at minimum 10.5. So you gotta build the engine, you gotta put the right numbers in. So stroke times RPM divided by 6 is piston speed. So that will help you calculate your port velocity. You need to calculate your piston speed, feet per minute, to be able to enter that in to calculate your port velocity. Now, when you have all that information, you're going to find out that your port velocity in these heads is already high. People talk about, oh, you know, port velocity, port velocity. Yes, port velocity is important. It helps with cylinder fill. It helps with this. But they say, oh, you can't even do light porting in these heads. You're going to kill your port velocity. That's bullshit, bro. When I already had fucking taken mine out, and I'm a hog, when I already hogged mine out and measured it up and figured out what my cross-sectional area should have been, there's more equations that'll you'll be able to calculate how big your cross-sectional area should be. Do I have any of that written down there? I'd have to find it. It's just too much information. All right. So yeah. So that's some good information right there. Those are some equations that are definitely going to help you, because knowing all that stuff. First of all, you can't overput these. I don't want to sound like an idiot and wrap that all up into one. You can overport it by inverting the port and cupping the bowl so the flow is now, you know, if the flow is supposed to be coming out around the valve, that now the flow's all inverted, yeah, that's like retard stuff. But if you have everything angled correctly and stuff like that, you really can't. That cross-sectional area in that Gx390 head cannot get big enough to flow what it needs to flow. If you hog that out, so when I calculated it for a 420 engine, this is a 460, on a 420 engine with this head, it wanted a 1.2 inch, square inch, 1.2 square inch cross-sectional area, which is like 27 millimeter cross-sectional area squared. Now, you're gonna say, oh, well, it's, you know, probably about 24. Well, yeah, it's about 24 if you measure it side to side, maybe in there. Now, you also have a guide in the way, so you need an actual 1.2 square inches. It's just like impossible to get that big of a cross-sectional area. So, I mean, even if you calculated it, anything, so by having the cross-sectional area smaller than 1.2 square, you're just going to have more velocity. There's no, you can't, you know, here's the bottom. If anyone says, oh, you're going to kill your velocity in that head, you can't kill the velocity in that head. But you can increase all of these things with this 5th cycle. So when I showed you this chart here that you guys took a picture of, now let's say you have a 36-31 setup. So a 36 millimeter intake valve is 1.41 inches. 25% of that, the curtain, is 352. So if you have a cam and ratio rockers with a total lift that's 352 or less, that is all staying within the curtain area of that valve and is not getting into a possible high flow area for the valve. So you would never have to worry about the port being a restriction in that valve, period. The only time, well, in these heads they are, I'm sorry, because they're just terrible. If this was a true race design, that 36 millimeter valve with its curtain area of 352 thousandths, if it doesn't get out of, if it say you don't get into like, you know, 375 thousandths lift, you will never get out of the curtain area. If you get out of the curtain area, that's when you get into the high flow capability of the valve. Getting into the high flow capability of the valve, the port can become the restriction. So that's like when you ask the question, when does the port become a restriction? So optimize the port, find out what you need. I can maybe find some more information on that for you. I have the calculation somewhere. Bigger the better. Find out what you need for cross-sectional area in your head. Just find out what you need to optimize all of that. So just that the stock port isn't a restriction already in its already restricted little 36 millimeter valve, and optimize that. So I mean, in this engine, you guys probably watched the video. I have like 436 left on my intake. So 436, I plan on putting a 42 millimeter intake valve, maybe a 43 millimeter intake valve. I haven't figured that out yet. The shit's unbelievable, you know, trying to figure this stuff out. They've sent me valve. And guys, I just got in some cool packages today. Some of my valves and some other stuff. I'll open these up, and you know, in future things, you're going to be seeing these things optimized into those tubed heads that I did. So we're off and running now. With, I mean, trying to find the guide that fits on the rocker, that fits on the retainer, that fits on this, that fits on your spring. I gotta just say, I mean, they sent me this blank. This is from Pereira. I mean, look at that retainer. That is just sick. E11095. It's titanium. They sent me a few different locks to check the angles I want. This is the bag the valve came in. This is the high groove lock like we have now that are readily available. Then they sent me one here. See how the groove's a little lower? But yeah, these Ferrera valves are nice. This is only a 37 millimeter, but it's got the 6 millimeter stem. So the reason I'm going over to a 6 millimeter stem and gonna have to put in a 6 millimeter guide, which we all know that our stock valves are 6.5, is because 6 millimeter stems are much more readily available. So if you guys do want to go over, John at Ferreira, tell him Paul from Paul's Cots sent you. He's Superman when it comes to calculating spring compression rates and install heights and valves and valve trim components. This is your guy, John at Ferreira. But I just want to take a picture of this. This is 6 setup. I mean, look at that thing. Looks like it says Ferrari. Titanium. I mean, this thing is like, woo! It's a fella. But yeah. That fits in a guide that you don't even have yet. That's going to have your install height at the right height. It's freaking insane because the thickness of those aluminum retainers that NR Racing uses that I'm currently using is different than, you know, say a titanium retainer that, you know, would be used on like, you know, a Mitsubishi or something, or a Nissan that would be thinner, which would adjust your install height. So it gets crazy. So that's what I'm going through now. All that big valve stuff, that's going to be an entire different head. I'm going to make 2 of them. If these 2 come out well, I'm gonna flow test them. If they come out well, I'm gonna stop making them. I'm just gonna stop making them. I'm gonna start selling them, because you know, people want them. People have been already asking me for them. So if you guys want one, let me know. You know, whatever. Take that back. That'll probably be way too much work. I'm retired. So now, knowing your valve, so take your valve lift, transfer it into inches, so you have millimeters. So 36 millimeters is 1.41. So you need a cam that's 352 or bigger to get it into the high flow area. If you're below that, then what that means, what this whole chart means, is if you look at this and you say, okay, I have a 36 millimeter intake valve, and I have a 31 millimeter exhaust valve. So my intake curtain, which is the biggest, is 352. My cam's done at 352. You're going to say, I'm running a stock cam. What that means is the only restriction is the seat at that point. You need to optimize that seat. You need to have somebody cut the angles on that seat that knows what the hell they're doing to be able to optimize the flow through that seat, because that is the only restriction at that point. If you're not above that curtain number, your flow, if the port's optimized, most likely if you're a stock valve, just a light cleanup. If you've got put in a 40, which is the common thing, a 38 or a 40, if you put in a 40, you need to really get in there, open up that bowl, make sure that's not a restriction, make sure that those seats are optimized with the valve angles. I just went out and bought a beautiful set of New Wave valve seat cutters. I bought 8 different heads and they're all double-sided. I bought the actual guides that tighten on the bottom that really keep it straight, and a motorized head that turns it and cuts it. So if anyone needs heads, no, I'm sorry, I don't even know why I keep saying that shit. I don't want that. Alright, so let's just stop the video there. That was just a bunch of information on how to optimize things. Also, look, you see when I look down this carb, what do you see? Who's gonna pick it out first? Sorry, somebody just called me and it jammed up my phone. This is what I see. This has to be blended. Okay? So, yeah, I mean, optimize it. I'll post some more videos. I just have too much information to put this in one video. I don't know why I didn't put these videos up before. I didn't know there was that much need for this knowledge. Ever since I started posting these types of videos, you know, the comments have just been blowing up. People have been calling me and texting me like crazy. So, there's some more of it. Let me know what else you guys need. I still got to do the carb tuner video. The reason I haven't done this yet is because I have not run this on methanol yet. I don't know if this is gonna work. I'm waiting. Once you see this thing up and running, then you'll know I'm going to be doing the carb video. I could do the one on the on gas though. I have this and the VM and PWK. PWK I already did, but it was a while ago when I was terrible at making videos. But I will do these carb tuning things again. I'll do one on the PWK, I'll do one on the TM, I'll do one on the VM, I'll do jetting, different engine sizes, etc. So, till the next time, guys, like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. I'm sorry, I don't feel good. But yeah, stuff helps the channel. Right now the channel's a baby. We got to get this thing to grow. Fantastic comments, guys. You know, I love the guys that say, you know, oh, this knowledge is awesome. You know, I didn't even know you guys wanted that much knowledge. I'm glad you guys joined me here in my kitchen daily almost. I'm going to try to put it out there for like probably the next week, like every day. I just have so much information. I'm just going to just dump it on you guys. So we'll see what happens. I'm not even really getting any work done because I'm just going through notes and trying to condense things down. I just have literally notebooks and notebooks and notebooks and papers and, you know, just charts and graphs and pictures and this and that and everything to go through. So, but yeah, all right. Talk to you later. Bye. Oh yeah, and another thing, I had mentioned in the other video, the last video on this segment, about the way the flow of air flows around here and how this creates a little pocket of air. I'll post a little picture now. I went back and found the image on how, you know, you can see the way the air flows around the carb. So I'll post that now, and boom.